Hey everyone, it's TechStrong TV. I'm Alan Schimmel, and today's Tuesday, October 6th. Welcome to episode 99 of TechStrong TV. We have some real surprises in store for episode 100, which will be on this Thursday. But for today's episode, first of all, we hope you're all well, safe, feeling good, being productive in work. We have some excellent interviews and information today. Let's not waste time and let's jump right into it. First of all, our first guest today will be Justin Hutchings from GitHub. Justin is a community product manager at GitHub around security, and GitHub just released their code scan security functionality. It's kind of built into GitHub, so it's pretty cool. Justin's going to tell us all about that. Then after Justin, I'm happy to introduce the new person from well, he's not new. He's been at BMC 25 years. Their SVP of the mainframe division, John McKenney at BMC. He's going to talk to us about the 15th annual BMC mainframe survey and the future of mainframe and DevOps. And from the old to the new company, just launching with their first launch day event this Thursday. They're presenting, and I should mention Kelsey Hightower is an advisor to the company. A great pedigree. Both of the two co-founders have had some really good success, really great experience, smart folks. Pixie Labs, and we have their two co-founders here, Zain Asghar and Ishan Mukherjee. If I mispronounced Ishan's last name, I apologize. But they're going to tell us all about their demo day this Thursday and what Pixie's all about. After that, we're going to go into something old. And again, celebrating DevOps Experience, third annual event coming up October 22nd. We go back to DevOps Experience 2019. And I have Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who keynoted last year. At the time, she was still at Google Cloud. Of course, Nicole is now with the GitHub folks as well. So doubling up on our GitHub today. But Nicole was about performance productivity and culture, oh my, and it really detailed a lot of the DORA survey data that came out of their 2019 and previous year's survey. After that, our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon, has news around the community sites here on Media Ops. Then Charlene also has a great interview with Matan Tesler of Odonomo, as well as a good preview of the week's webinars in store for us here at Media Ops. After that, I'll be back to introduce Mitch over at the Analyst Corner. And Mitchell has a good interview with my friend Shang Liang. Shang, of course, is Rancher Labs CEO and co-founder, and we'll be talking about some big new announcements coming out of Rancher, which, of course, was recently acquired, and I'm sure Shang will talk about that as well, though we've spoken about it already by SUSE. And then that'll wrap things up. I'll be back to close it up after Mitchell. So full day here on Tuesday, October 6th for episode 99. Let's take a quick break, and I'll be right back with our first guest.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Turn up your CI/CD pipe and put your observability on. Ground control to Major Tom.
10, 9, ignition sequence
countdown engines on.
6, 5,
Check ignition and may God's love be with you.
This is Major Tom to Ground Control. DevOps Command is here to say, I have a great way for you to engage today. DevOps looks very different, but not to worry. We have KK to show you the way, and Batya Galoob has something to say. And more. DevOps Experience 3 is coming your way October 22nd. And as it has been since the first, it's virtual. We know everything's virtual today, but this one is designed virtual from the start, and it's free as it should be. We have great speakers beyond KK and Batya Galoob, along with lots of learning and interactive chat, expo halls. We're going to be covering CI, CD, observability, GitOps, SRE, tools, the humans of DevOps, and some surprises too. Sign up today at DevOpsExperience.com. DevOps Experience is going to go where no DevOps conference has ever gone before, and the force will be with you. So can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? See you at DevOps Experience, October 22nd, DevOpsExperience.com. All right. So, GitHub continues to expand from just being Git into the CI/CD space and everything that goes with it, along with this whole GitOps thing going on, right? Justin Hutchings, the product manager there, he's going to talk to us about the latest functionality GitHub is releasing, which is security related, and it's a code scanning tool built right into the GitHub product. So let's go now to Justin Hutchings of GitHub.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another segment here for TechStrong TV. My guest this segment is Justin Hutchings of GitHub. Justin has been a member of panels we've done in the past and comes to give us some news from GitHub. But before we get to the news, Justin, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Yeah, I'm Justin Hutchings. I'm a product manager here at GitHub. And I've been working on our functionality around static analysis, security testing inside GitHub as a native capability.
Fantastic. So, Justin, we've got some big news. General availability of code testing, but you tell it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really exciting. We have been working on code scanning for the last year, ever since we made the acquisition of Semel back in September of 2019. And it is now generally available. Anyone with an open source repository on GitHub can try it today. There's no wait list, there's no queue. We even cover the actions minutes for those folks. And then it's also available to enterprise customers through our advanced security product.
Very nice. So let's talk a little bit about the code scanning product. What exactly is it scanning? What's it looking for? What's it do? How does it work?
Yeah, so code scanning, at a really high level, we're talking about a static analysis product. So we have a system that we've developed called CodeQL, which is a semantic analysis engine. It parses all of your code into a graph. And then we have queries that find bad behaviors, data flows that can result in a SQL injection or remote code execution vulnerabilities. And so we've built out this entire system to orchestrate that running of CodeQL and providing those results to developers in their workflow. And we released this in beta back in May. Since we did that, we've done 1.4 million scans. We found more than 20,000 security issues across the code bases on GitHub that opted in just during the beta.
Excellent. And it's native. It's kind of native GitHub now, so I'm sure the integration into the repository and interface and everything is pretty slick, pretty smooth.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea. We want to make sure that this is a product that's first and foremost for developers. There's no sign into another portal. There's no worrying about, provisioning access to another thing. It's all baked into GitHub. There's a security tab. But I think the best part is, if there's a security problem in one of your pull requests in code you just wrote that you're trying to upstream, we surface those alerts right there, and only the alerts that are net new in your code. And that really gives developers sort of the confidence that they're not introducing vulnerabilities, or it lets them know if they are, so they can fix it before it affects the production.
Excellent. You know, Justin, you probably don't realize it, but you said something that, you know, today is kind of matter of factly, but 5, 6, 7 years ago would have been sort of profound. And that is, you know, this is a tool, this is a security tool for developers. And you know, that it does my heart good to hear it, because, you know, 6 years ago, I think I did my first DevSecOps event as part of RSA conference. I do one every year. And I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of ridicule back then that, you know, developers don't give a crap about security, and you know, security are just the people who say no anyway, and this back and forth. And, you know, sitting here now talking to GitHub, talking about security tools for developers built into GitHub. What more, you know, that's I forgot the word I'm even looking for, but that proves the point here, right? It's not something we would have even contemplated 6 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if I think back to 6 years ago, I think I was still working at Microsoft on the Windows team, and we'd acquired some software. You know, it was a couple 100,000 lines of code we were trying to integrate, and the security team said, "Great, you have to do security testing on it." Okay, no problem. So we put it in, and then we had to spend 2 months doing annotations to the code to make the analysis work properly. And that's what I think a lot of developers still think static analysis is. We've taken it in a completely different direction here. You know, this is a workflow where you go, you know, it's 3 clicks to get it deployed. If you're running on any interpreted languages like JavaScript or Python, it just works. If there's a compiled language like C, C++, you know, there's a small step to get your build running. But for the most part, we're seeing most people are successful, you know, very quickly, and they're getting those results into their workflow, and then they're actually dealing with them. You know, when we look at the statistics we pulled around how many developers are actually dealing with the alerts in a pull request, over the last month, 72% of the alerts we surfaced in pull requests were fixed before the developer merged code. And you know, you compare that to where we used to be with getting developers to care and listen. It's miles apart.
Yeah, it really is. Justin, I want to bring up another kind of big picture item in this, and that is, you know, we've seen the rise. You know, it's been coming a while, but certainly within the last, let's call it 9 months to a year, of this whole GitOps movement, if you will. And that's the idea, and I think obviously GitHub's been a leader in it, that, you know, Git is more than just a repository. It's not just a place where you can store your code. It's actually a place where we can work on that code, where we can, in addition to continue developing, you know, coding, we can test this code. We can do security testing. We can do, you know, other kinds of testing on this code. We could begin our CI/CD process while still in Git. So this whole concept of GitOps, I mean, for something like GitHub, you know, it's the reason it makes you so much more than just a repository, quite frankly, right? And
It does, yeah. You know, when you think back, we almost take GitHub Actions, our sort of native CI environment, for granted at this point. But a couple of years ago, you know, if you started a new repository and you wanted to put your code there, you wanted to think about, great, how do I do a DevOps workflow? You had to go and find a CI provider and hook it up and sign up for an account there and hope they didn't charge you for it. You had to figure out, how do I actually get this thing into my production servers? If you wanted security, you had to think real hard about where you went and who you had to pay. You know, there was this sort of like,
if you could find anything, I mean,
exactly.
You know, it wasn't quite that easy. It wasn't just writing a check or whipping out a credit card. You first had to find something that worked in that kind of, you know, that shift left paradigm.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, as, you know, GitHub has become sort of a ubiquitous sort of platform, and, you know, other Git providers as well, we've seen more standardization around how tools integrate and how they sort of bring those insights into the developer workflow. And so now, you look at, the experience for a new developer, and, between setting up a repository, setting up a template for your code, and then getting it all the way out to the cloud after it's been security tested, we're talking, minutes, not days.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Justin, the other thing is, we've seen the rise of DevSecOps, right, over the last 4 or 5, as I said, maybe 6 years. And, one of the nice things about where I sit, Justin, is I'm kind of Switzerland. I get to talk to everyone. And, quite frankly, we're seeing a lot of new startups as well as established security people making that shift left, trying to move security into the GitOps world, into that, if we look at that software delivery pipeline from left to right, the further left they move, the more they move it into GitOps, right? And I'm wondering if this tool and some of the other stuff we're doing isn't really seeing this whole kind of subcategory of GitSecOps, if you will, right? Where, again, it's part of GitOps certainly, but there's so much good stuff happening around security at this particular phase of development that it's become its own little sub ecosystem, its own sub community of folks. And though it's primarily aimed at developers, because that's who's working on it right there, it also gives insight to the security folks who are now, it's like peering out of the Hubble telescope back in time. They can peer further back in time, in the life cycle of this code, and have some, confidence that this has been tested, and B, see what's coming down and what's out there. It's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we did when we built out code scanning that I'm really proud of, we actually built code scanning by default to be interoperable with a standard. Oasis publishes a standard called SERIF. It's the Static Analysis Results Interchange Format. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons we did this is because we know, while we're really proud of CodeQL and the support that it has for, the languages and scenarios it does, we can't cover everything. The ecosystem is too big. And so, we've got, as part of our launch today, we're actually working with about a dozen partners that have all integrated into this exact same developer-friendly workflow. So we know that developers and security professionals don't want to go to 5, 6 different websites just to have their defense in depth. They want to see all the things together being talked about in the same way. And so we're trying to create that virtuous ecosystem where everyone is interoperable and everyone's able to get the insights they need at exactly the right time.
Fantastic. Justin, I want to make sure we got this right for our audience. So this tool is free with your GitHub account right now. Is that for public repo, right? Not if you're running a private repo, an enterprise private or something on-prem or something like that, but for the public repos, it is free. And then it is also part of, for the enterprise and enterprise security customers at GitHub, it's part of that as well.
We're making that available as part of an add-on product that we call GitHub Advanced Security. So this is sort of a way that we're able to really invest in class-leading capabilities around software composition analysis, static analysis, secret detection. So we're sort of created that bundle and are making those features available to that set of customers.
Pretty cool stuff. So product's GA now. Congratulations. I mean, I know what's involved in taking a product from, the drawing board to alpha and beta and GA. But you know how technology is. Tomorrow you'll be yesterday's news. What are you going to do as we continue to build this out? What can we expect?
We're continuing to focus on, items of feedback that we've received from customers through the beta. A couple of capabilities that folks can look forward to things around managing permissions for who can access these alerts. Turns out access control and RBAC is a very complicated topic. And depending on what kind of organization you have, you may not want very many people to see what security vulnerabilities you have. So we're creating some capabilities to allow folks to go and dial that up and down as they see fit. We're also looking at things like notification features. Historically, we've had notifications for a lot of our security functionality, but it's actually a sensitive topic because we currently send security alerts for dependencies to everyone that's an admin on a repo or an organization. And we've heard loud and clear that people want more control over when they get notified. And so we're working on trying to make sure that when we bring notifications to code scanning, that it does that by default, and people can really carefully manage their notifications to ensure they're only hearing about the repositories they care about.
Excellent stuff. So I guess that two-way communication then it sounds like it's already pretty well defined and established, and you're acting on that. You know what, Justin? It just, as I said in the beginning, it's so great to see you guys continuing to build out security as part of this. Let me ask you a question though. When you think about GitHub, and I don't mean maybe you personally, I mean your fellow GitHubbers, if you will. Do you still think of GitHub as the repo, or do you think of GitHub as the DevOps solution or CI/CD pipeline solution or something even bigger than that?
I think you're absolutely right. You can't just see it as just commodity storage anymore, because there are so many additional features, whether it's actions in our CI system or our support for hosting packages or containers to all of our security capabilities. There's a lot of sort of upstream value that completes the end-to-end scenario. And so I look at GitHub as sort of a nexus of developer energy. And, it's a place where the entire community comes together to make developers more productive. It's really phenomenal because there aren't many places where you get to work across every programming language, operating system, and scenario. And GitHub is sort of the place that all those communities come together.
Sure is. One last area I'll go in, and I kind of have to, it's the elephant in all these conversations. How's COVID kind of affected, what's going on at GitHub at a macro level, as well as the particular rollout of the security tool?
That's a great question. So, most of the engineers that work on code scanning and all of our, code analysis features are actually based in the UK. And so, between the acquisition and the start of the pandemic, I was in the UK, once a month to try and go make sure that we were planning and figuring out all the issues. I'm based in Seattle. And so the time zones can be a little tough when you're managing a team in Europe. But we've always been a distributed company. And so we have that sort of asynchronous, sort of DNA. And, once we went, total lockdown, we just went back to our roots on being a distributed company. And, I'd be lying if I said we didn't have to scale back here and there because of, folks that are watching their kids or dealing with sick family members. But I'm really proud of, how much resilience the team has shown and how much flexibility everyone's been able to show to make this work despite, the circumstances in the world around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, we're about out of time, but for people who want more information, where can they get it?
I think the best place to start right now is go to github.blog. We've got the announcement of the code scanning GA with lots of great links on how you can get that enabled, or if you want that for your private repositories, how you can get in contact with our sales team. A lot of good resources there. And as always, we are so excited for everyone's feedback and energy on the features we're doing. So tweet at us, send us support, go to our support forums. We love to hear what people are liking, disliking, or otherwise.
Love it, man. Hey, great work, Justin. Keep it up.
Thanks,
We
Alan.
need more security in the world. Justin Hutchings, program manager, product manager at GitHub, announcing GitHub's latest security scanning tool. It's available right now if you have a public GitHub account. Go check it out. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with another guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
You know, BMC has been a leader in the mainframe space for many, many years. John McKenney is their Senior VP for mainframe. And he joins us today to discuss the 15th annual BMC Mainframe Survey, as well as sort of the future of the mainframe that the folks at, or at least how BMC views that world. And John's a bright guy. I actually had a great time talking with him. I think you'll enjoy it. Here's John McKenney, SVP at BMC.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and you're watching another segment of TechStrong TV. Our guest for this segment is John McKenney. John is an SVP over at BMC in their mainframe division. John, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here with you.
It's great to have you here. Before we get into mainframes and all of that, I just, it looks like I got a fellow Star Wars fan.
That's
here.
right. Oh, I've always got the Force with me.
I see that.
Got to bring back up.
So that's not Baby Yoda, though. That's full-blown old man Yoda.
That's the full-blown. That's right. I'm waiting for that next season of The Mandalorian, as I'm sure a lot of people are.
Yeah, I think it starts this month. I forget what day.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to. That'll take John. We'll that
be off in the
hole.
weeds.
Yeah, we'll forget it. Let's go back to mainframes. So, John, our audience is of course familiar with the whole DevOps and mainframe kind of market. It's one of our areas that we cover a bunch, and they're quite frankly very familiar with CompuWare and BMC as major players in the apps modernization and DevOps and mainframe market. That being said, though, I think this is the first time we've had you on. So why don't we just give our audience a brief background maybe on you? And I mentioned you were in SVP, but who's John McKenney?
Well, I've been with BMC 25 years.
Wow.
So, BMC just celebrated our 40th anniversary as a company, which in software years is a bit like dog years. It seems like forever, right?
It is. It is.
And I joined 25 years ago to start in our development organization on some of our DB2 products. So I've been with the company in a variety of roles, but always connected to our engineering organizations. And now I have the pleasure of working with some phenomenal people across our company that develop our software. And I know you talked with Chris O'Malley multiple times, and BMC and CompuWare are two of those organizations that never believed the mainframe was going away, that have continued to innovate on this great platform and continue to do so, and firmly believe that the best days of the mainframe are ahead, not behind us.
Absolutely. We were talking off camera. We recorded a DevOps Unbound episode, I think it was last week, on DevOps in the mainframe. And we had Sam Knudsen of CompuWare BMC product manager, as well as Rosalind Radcliffe from IBM, and Mitchell Ashley, an analyst, myself, and someone from Tricentis, Gerda. And it was a great discussion on, it is in front of us. And I mean, the beautiful thing is the latest generation of mainframe hardware, right? Whether you're an IBM fan or not is not really the point here. But the latest Z platform is far and away just an engineering marvel compared to, previous, what we may think of as mainframes, that take up like a bus or something like that, or a whole floor. It's just incredible what you can do with it, and so it makes for all kinds of possibilities, no matter what languages you want to run, or whether you're running containers. I mean, the containers were a mainframe thing.
Absolutely.
So, good stuff there. But
yeah.
John, recently BMC, came out with their latest report on the state of mainframe survey that you guys have been doing now for a few years. Why don't you, before we get into the results of it, why don't you give us a little background on the survey itself?
Yeah, sure. So it's our annual mainframe survey, and this was the 15th annual one. And we have been doing this for a number of years, really to do a couple of things. Originally, it started where we wanted to do our own primary research. 15 years ago, we were looking around and there wasn't a ton of primary research just dedicated to the mainframe platform at the time. So we started it to help us really understand at a more broad level, more than what we just heard from the customers that we have conversations with all the time, but more broadly. And as we were doing that and we were sharing that internally, we had conversations with folks like you beyond BMC and said, this is a really great thing to share with the market overall. So then we began publishing some of the results of that survey just to share some of the trends that we see. And one of the great things in this year's survey is that, again, we continue to see a very bullish outlook for the platform. More than 90% of the respondents, said they see the platform as a platform for long-term growth. And this is a worldwide survey. Each and every year, Alan, we have over 1,000 respondents. We did this year. This year was a bit unusual, shall we say, in that, we started the survey in early March. We all know what happened early March. So we kept the survey open for about 50 days. So we had a bit of a mix, right? Just before the COVID was really starting to unfortunately take off in a way that none of us could foresee. And it ran for 50 days. So great response worldwide. Again, over 1,000 respondents. So it's a really pretty comprehensive survey that gives us a lot of great insights. So,
I mean, just the fact that it's its 15th years, I mean, that's an accomplishment, right? What in our industry, you mentioned BMC celebrating its 40th year. You've been there 25 years, right? That is such an anomaly, almost, compared to when we see in today's world where if people stay in a job for 18 months, they're holders of the tribal knowledge. You know what I mean? They're the vets there.
That's
it's
right.
A little crazy, yep. But I mean, you're preaching to the choir a little bit when you're talking to me, but let's talk with our audience, John. What were some of you mentioned, 90% of of the respondents see it as a platform for growth. Conversely, you don't hear many people raise their hand saying, I'm looking to pull out my mainframe.
Well,
you don't hear a lot of that. I think, and it's, again, if we go back 7 months ago, our world has changed, right? The things that we were talking about 7 months ago, and things are different. But one of the things that was there 7 months ago was that we were seeing that the platform was continuing to grow. We saw that in our survey last year and the last several years. And if you think about how the world has changed in the last 7 months, and we are all now more reliant than we have ever been before for doing a lot of our work and our business activities online, right? I'm here in my home as I have been for the last 7 months. And, there's more online activity, right? We're doing more online shopping than we've ever done before. If you weren't doing online banking, I think almost everyone was, you're doing that now, right? And you think about everything from streaming our entertainment to just about anything that we can think of, that's driving more and more digital workloads and digital transactions. And what are some of the things that you and I and everyone that's watching are concerned about when we're doing that? Well, probably number one, we're all maybe a little bit less patient now than maybe we were before. So availability and performance is always top of mind. I want instant gratification. I want that order to go through now, right? You want it to be reliable, right? You want to know that it's going to be there when you come back in and check and see, is my package, is it, where is it? Is it en route yet? Has it been picked up? But then you also quickly think about security. We want to know that as we're conducting business and we're ordering things with our credit cards or directly from our bank accounts, that, this is a secure site, that the company I'm dealing with, has got a reputation and a track record for handling their business transactions in a very secure way. And when you think about those attributes, I can't think of a platform, Alan, that's any better in the world at being highly available, highly resilient, highly secure, and able to handle that type of workload. And I think it's because of those attributes that we're continuing to see and will continue to see, good, strong mainframe growth looking ahead.
I don't, this again, you're preaching to the choir with me. Transaction for transaction, those three characteristics, I don't think anything comes close, quite frankly, let alone, as good as or anything. Yep. So, John, I had a chance to peruse the survey a little, or the report and the findings a little bit. One of the things a couple things I thought were really interesting. One was that, we mentioned what kind of sort of an engineering marvel the latest generation of Z is, but the expectation from your audience seems to be that this will continue to improve as well, that they will get more MIPS, right? It will continue in that, getting better and better.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, right, our audience here are familiar with the mainframe. So maybe I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but I think what, the broader community is beginning to recognize and understand is the mainframe is an engineering marvel, right? One of the reasons that BMC has been around 40 years is because we started developing software to help clients get more out of their mainframe investment. And we're able to continue to do that because of the great work that IBM and the IBM engineers have been doing, right? The mainframe today is a modern engineering marvel, and some people would say, well, it's old technology. Well, it's old technology like talking about a telephone being old technology, right? So the phones that we walk around and do everything that we can do today are nothing like the telephone that Alexander Graham Bell, right, invented. Yeah. There's no comparison, but yet
they have a name in common. Yeah,
exactly. They have a name in common, and that's about it with the mainframe. Except, like the telephone, it's always been downward compatible. When I get a new phone, I can still call my mom, my brother, my friends, right? That doesn't change. I can do new things, and the mainframe has worked that same way, right? So each and every generation, you have new capabilities, and really what BMC has been focused on is helping our clients continue to modernize this platform and get more out of it. And that's why so many organizations really rely upon it, is that central data processing hub. And some of the things that we see in our survey that clients are telling us that they are modernizing the platform. You covered DevOps, and we talk about that quite a bit. You mentioned the segment that you just did. And more than half of the respondents this year said they're now using DevOps in their mainframe environment. Now, if we were to ask that question 4 or 5 years ago, it'd have been next to no one. And I think some of that credit goes to IBM, and some of that credit goes to our CompuWare colleagues at BMC, who really pioneered the way to help clients mainstream the mainframe and connect it into their enterprise DevOps pipelines. So a lot of great work, and you mentioned talking with Sam Knutson about that as well. But
sure.
I was going to say it's not just in the DevOps space though. It's also, we see it, respondents talking about how they're beginning to deploy AIOps technologies. So within BMC, we launched BMC AIME Operational Insights earlier this year. And now we see almost a little more than 40% are beginning to use AIOps technologies in the mainframe. And then in the security space, right, 34% are now trying to connect their mainframe security events into their enterprise security operations center. So there's a lot going on where clients and the organizations continue the modernization effort. Because if you're not growing, we all know what you're doing. That's part of growing, and continue to grow, continue to be relevant for their organizations.
Absolutely. Excellent. John, one of the things that came up in our discussion on that DevOps Unbound series last week was this idea. In all honesty, one of the folks on the panel was a little younger, and she took the thing that, mainframe are just for COBOL programmers, and that you can imagine how that was received. But, there is sort of this perception of, it's running your grandpa or grandma's language, and how many COBOL professionals on there. And the thing about it, there's kind of two angles to this. Number one is it doesn't just run COBOL. It could run just about any language you want to run today on it, the latest and greatest. But number two, it's not your grandma and grandpa that are programming these mainframes. We're seeing an entire new generation of mainframe programmers taking their seats at the table here and really taking charge. And I think your survey brought this out, right?
Absolutely, Alan. We started tracking that a few years ago, and this year's survey, just as you said, saw a continued increase in the number of, we call them the Z next generation professionals that are on the platform, right? So, we had this time, there's over 65, almost 70% of the respondents are under the age of 49, right? So we see also a growth in the number of women in the respondents this year. 40% were women responding to this year's survey, which is a nice change over what we've seen in prior surveys. So
that's great.
If you look, that are coming into the platform, give me a tremendous amount of confidence that there's a strong future ahead for the platform as well, because these young professionals have got a lot of great ideas. They're very curious. They want to continue to innovate, and they absolutely believe, as I said earlier, that the best days of the platform are ahead as well. And with them, learning how to use it and leverage some of the new technologies, and whether you're talking about containers on the platform, running different languages. COBOL is a fantastic language. I used to COBOL back in the day when I worked for a railroad. But there are other languages that clients are using as well, whether it's Java or Python, you name it. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how organizations want to continue to deploy and get value from the platform to service their business.
Excellent. And look, back to the COVID thing, right? When the whole kind of unemployment and stimulus thing, there were states in the country that couldn't update their unemployment programs because they didn't have access to enough COBOL and mainframe programmers, because these things all run on mainframes. And what's funny is maybe it's a U.S. Problem, but certainly worldwide we're seeing more and more. And I don't know what the breakdown was. When you look at that new generation of mainframe folks, John, how many were here in the U.S. versus rest of the world? But it's a great way. If you're looking for a job, get some mainframe skills, because there are plenty of jobs out there.
And there's plenty of resources out there as well, right? BMC offers some resources, as does IBM. So there's tons of resources for folks that want to take on new languages, or languages like COBOL as well. And one thing I know about working with the next generation of engineers, they're not afraid of anything, right? I mean, so they'll take it on, and they can master it in a much quicker time frame than some of us, maybe older, more experienced mainframe professionals might have thought, which I think is excellent as well.
Absolutely. John, we only got a few minutes left. I want to transition now to the last part of what I wanted to make sure we covered, and that is, okay, here's the survey results, 15th year. How does BMC kind of synthesize what they're seeing in the survey, and what are you guys doing around mainframes and DevOps going forward? We're in a new normal, hopefully soon, and what are you guys doing around that?
Well, we're continuing to, number one, stay very close to our customers. We've had to work and connect with our customers in new and different ways. So a lot of virtual calls with clients, but we continue to use our clients as our development design partners. They drive our innovation because after all, what we're developing, delivering is for them. And the only way we can be assured that what we're developing will provide value is to include them in that process. So our teams are fully agile. So you know that in talking with Chris and the CompuWare team, the BMC mainframe team is fully agile as well. So we're actively involved with our clients, bringing out new solutions. And last week, we also announced our new quarterly release. So for CompuWare, it was the 24th consecutive quarter. For BMC, that represents over 300 product deliveries over just the last couple of years alone. And now we're on the same quarterly release cadence. So last week, we announced a new set of BMC AMI solutions for our DB2 data management products. So AMI is our automated mainframe intelligence suite of products that provide leading edge technology to help clients get better availability, performance, cost, security across their platform. And we think of it this way, Alan. You know, AMI is like the doctor that you and I wish we had that can tell us ahead of time if we're maybe veering off and maybe to do some things to make our health a little bit better. We think of AMI as the modern data scientist that helps ensure that our data is always available and only accessible by the folks that need it to get great business insights. And AMI is the great security professional who lets you know that, you know what, there's something happening in your environment that you need to take care of. Here's exactly what it is. And you know what, we can take some automated remediation to shut that down so that you can keep your environment secure. And then AMI is also a bit like the great financial analysts that can help us make the best decisions around how we get that availability, but also get it at a fair and appropriate cost for what we're trying to deliver in our business. Additionally, last week, sorry, I was going to just tell you last week.
No,
as well.
go ahead.
Yeah, CompuWare, we had a great integration between Topaz Total Test and our ISPW solution. What's really cool about that is this new integration helps you make sure that you test just the appropriate portions of your code that were changed in that test. So just think about the new levels of automation that we're getting into and the value that can provide organizations. So when you net that all out, we're continuing to innovate. We're continuing to deliver new solutions to our clients that help them be more effective in delivering on their business capabilities.
Excellent. John, I hate to cut you off, but we're about out of time. I told you it goes quickly.
Yep.
Maybe you come back on. We could continue the discussion a couple weeks or whatever. You know,
I look forward to it.
It's not going away. Pleasure meeting you. Thanks for giving us the lowdown on the BMC mainframe survey, as well as kind of a look at what's in store for BMC and their mainframe business. John McKenney, SVP, Mainframe Division over at BMC here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next guest.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From MediaOps, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
So we're going to go from BMC, which recently celebrated its 40th birthday, released its 15th annual BMC mainframe survey, to a company just having their demo day this Thursday. The company's called Pixie Labs. Pixie's the product. It is an engine. It plays in the observability space, Kubernetes, but it's a developer tool. Two really bright, personable folks co-founded it, and I'm happy to have them both on here with me. Zain Asghar and Ishan Mukherjee from Pixie Labs, and let's find out all about it.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, and thanks for joining us for another episode here on TechStrong TV. For this episode, I'm really happy to be joined by two co-founders from Pixie Labs, as some may know them. We've got Zain Asghar, who's CEO, co-founder, and Ishan, I'm not going to even mess up your last name. I'm going to let you say it, but co-founder and chief product officer. Ishan, what's your last name?
My last name is Mukherjee. It's Ishan Mukherjee. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Ishan. It's our pleasure to have you here. And Zain, thank you for being here with us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us here.
So this is a case of first impression for our audience. I think most of them probably may not know yet who Pixie is and what you guys do. So let's start there. Who's Pixie? What does Pixie do?
Yeah, so Pixie is a developer tool that helps software engineers understand, debug, and monitor applications that run on Kubernetes without requiring any changes to their code.
That's excellent. And how did you guys come to found this company? Give us maybe a little of your own personal backgrounds.
Sure. I can go first, and Sean, feel free to chime in here. So right before Pixie, I used to be an EIR at Benchmark, and was basically taking a look at various things to do and things to do with application data, and that's how we landed up with Pixie. Part of my work at Benchmark was actually looking at eBPF, which is this technology that we actually use to help seamlessly capture data into Pixie. And if you're interested, we can go into details there. And prior to Benchmark, I used to be in Google's AI team, working on machine learning, which is another big part of how Pixie helps application developers.
Great. Just to jump in. So before Zain and I started the company, I was one of the product leads for Siri at Apple, leading their knowledge graph team. Background's very similar to Zain. We worked on data and machine learning systems for close to a decade. And when we got started with Pixie, the core idea, as Zain mentioned, was trying to give developers as much data as they needed without them doing any work. So pretty excited to kind of bring that out to the developer community.
Yeah, and I guess from both of us perspective, I actually met Ishan several years ago, and we've just been thinking and working through things. And when I was an EIR, around halfway through, we teamed up together and started working on this stuff together and brainstorming and thinking more through what Pixie would be.
Excellent. So, look, Kubernetes, ultra hot space, right? Developer tools, also ultra hot space, right? And has been for some time. When we look at developer tools, and especially in a cloud native Kubernetes environment, there's a whole gamut of places where developer tools play, right? So a very hot area now is GitOps, as they call it, right? So as developers are actually coding apps, we are testing apps, running security tests, quality tests, all different testing, and collaborating pre-deployment, right? And so there's action going on there. The whole CI/CD thing, the actual delivering, especially Kubernetes has flipped that on its head. We see new tools, new opportunities, new way of deploying code and applications. And then, again, because of Kubernetes and Kubernetes being the top, the lead app or the lead tool, but there's a whole stack of cloud native, right, that kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the Kubernetes deployments. But the idea of, deploying apps on Kubernetes, and now what, right? How do we monitor them? How do we continuously improve them? How do we get feedback back to the developers, right, to make the next iterations better? And, 5 years ago, maybe before Kubernetes, applications were developed and we would monitor the apps, right? So APM was a thing, and we saw AI ops with ML ops and stuff like this kind of supplementing it. And now in the last, maybe in the last year, with this whole COVID thing, my whole time frame has been thrown away. but it seems like it was about a year ago. We started hearing a lot about this term observability, right? So we're observing, and Zain, we were talking off camera, and you had a good definition, three elements of observability, I think it was, right? And why don't you share that? What do we mean by observability like that?
Sure. I guess people typically talk about observability in terms of capturing metrics, traces, and logs. And with Pixie, one of the things we did was actually unify the data plane. As we were saying before, like Ishan and I mostly come from a data systems background. So when we saw the space, part of what we actually wanted to do was to build like a unified data system that would actually seamlessly capture data, be able to present it to the user, and be able to support workloads like machine learning, which we're actively doing right now. Yep. To go to your other point there, Alan, regarding scripts, one of the things that we haven't gotten to is that Pixie is actually completely driven by scripts, right? And ultimately, we can actually use scripts to build new monitoring pipelines, new dashboards, while we strive to basically give users instant out-of-box visibility and functionality. We're actually very, very extensible using like a Python-like language. And something that we've seen is while the company has been pretty focused on application performance, application performance use case, people in our community have already used our scripts to build things like network monitoring and application security and all sorts of other fun things.
Right. Just to add to Zen's point, the way the community perceives Pixie is essentially a Kubernetes native observability platform, which just runs inside of Kubernetes without them doing any work. And it exposes this kind of scriptable interface where we have a high-end experience for APM or application performance monitoring. But as Zen was mentioning, we have a growing kind of community of what we call Pixie NOS developers across the world who build views like network performance monitoring, doing some application security use cases. So the idea is to enable the global developer community to codify a lot of these debugging, monitoring, and analysis workflows as kind of Pixie scripts, and basically scaling from there.
Got it.
And actually, one of the fun things is you brought up this idea of GitOps being a thing back a little while ago, and still now. Part of the cool thing with Pixie is that you can actually define all your monitoring using scripts, so you can actually build it and version control it just like you would anything else.
Right.
Excellent. Using sort of that Git mentality or Git functionality going forward, guys. My fault. I didn't lay it right. So you started Pixie about 2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. Is it open source in the community and everything, or when we talk about community, what are we talking?
Right. Yeah, I could take that question. So Pixie as a product is a freemium SaaS tool with really heavy kind of open source contributions. So the way we are set up right now is the core engine, which is this query engine, which lives inside of your community, inside of your Kubernetes cluster. That is not open source. We do have plans to kind of open that up as it gets more mature. So what is open is the scripts, essentially these kind of this catalog of workflows that is open source in our kind of Pixie community. And then a lot of our BPF probes, so something that Zen kind of touched on, the way we collect a lot of this data kind of automatically, they have to be open source. So right now, think of Pixie as a 3-layered cake: collectors, the engine, and the scripts. The scripts are open source. A lot of the collectors are open source. The engine is not yet, but we do plan to kind of expand.
So it's almost a reverse open. We hear about open core technologies, where the engine maybe would be open core, but the scripts and so forth may be in fact not open source. This is that in reverse, it seems, where it's interesting.
Yeah, something we could add up is because Zen and I started off with first principles from like trying to build the best developer product possible versus building on top of something that already existed. So we were hyper focused on solving the developer pain. So kind of our philosophy is how do we get the best product out there in the fastest way possible, and so we've been very open with our so we built this with the community. So we have a community of kind of right now like 200 plus kind of teams on kind of the community. And we've been very open. Hey, here's how we're thinking about it. They've given us feedback like what Zen said, like the script should be open source, and we open source that. So that's the relationship that we see ourselves kind of proceeding on. We completely want to build with the community for the community. So kind of as we evolve, like contributing back to the broader community is like fundamental to our strategy.
Yep. What about integrating the kind of stuff that you're seeing with Pixie with some other kind of like a Prometheus or some other open source kind of, engines that allow you to see things?
Yeah, so part of the thing about Pixie is that we do have like an open API. And one of the things that we can do about using our scripts is basically generate data for Prometheus to scrape. So we do plan in the short term to have like an endpoint which Prometheus can scrape to get the data out, similar to how we can pull data from Prometheus.
Excellent.
And of course, once you start doing that, you could use things like OpenTelemetry or whatever the open source tool du jour is, right? You guys can, once you have an API, use them. So does Pixie have sort of its own UI that these other tools can feed into in addition to the Pixie monitoring data? Or does it go out into a different, it can plug into your existing UI, or, how does that all work?
Yeah, so Pixie actually has its own native interface, right, which is backed by our API. We don't do anything fancy outside of our API, so everything we do is supportable by any other tool. But basically, we have our own native like CLI tool. We have our native like web UI, which works on either desktop or mobile. And our API can be used and is already being used by other systems to pull data.
Absolutely. To speak to that and kind of touch on your previous question, we launched our public beta last week. Prior to that, we've been running an early access beta, and the adoption has ranged from early stage companies to all the way to internet scale production clusters, large streaming applications. So as we go further up the maturity, the way they use Pixie is have Pixie running in the production clusters. They use the native UIs for live debugging, and they use our API to relay data into their upstream systems. Those could be existing monitoring platforms, or it could be their kind of internal code base around load balancing. So that's how they use us.
Excellent, I love it. So you mentioned that ML is a big piece of the equation here. Talk to us about how you're using ML to maybe gather this information or pass it along, or how are you using ML?
Well, yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So part of the challenge with Pixie is that we actually get in there and take a look at every single request, every single thing that's happening on your machine. And at some point, like it's kind of like prohibitively expensive for us to actually ship this data off even the machine into another node for analysis. So what we actually do is like locally analyze all the traffic, like all the HTTP requests, all the gRPC requests, SQL calls that are being made, and generate features from them that we can actually ship over to another machine or understand locally. So one of the things with Pixie is that we've basically built this like classification system that runs on the node itself, summarizes the data, and makes it understandable to our upstream system and eventually to users. So an example of this is that we might be able to say that, given a set of requests, like certain request bodies are much slower than others, or certain user groups are much slower than others. And we'll be able to recognize that and be able to point you to that information right away.
Excellent. So, you know what? We didn't do again. I forgot to do this. For people who want information, where can they get more information about Pixie?
Yeah, I can jump into that one because Zen and I all of us are like gearing up to our demo day, which is this Thursday. So if you want more information, go to pixielabs.ai. That's our website. It's developer focused, talks about how you can try it out. If you want to learn more, this Thursday, we're doing a 90-minute session where Kelsey Hightower, Zan, myself, and some of the founding engineers are going to go through a demo of Pixie and how the community uses it. So please register, attend. And the last thing is we are building this pretty openly with the community. So we have a Slack group which you can join, and we can communicate there. So the recap, our website is pixielabs.ai. Demo day is on the 10/8, and then reach us out on Slack. And we're obviously on Twitter, so definitely follow us.
Excellent. So your demo day is this Thursday coming up.
It is this Thursday. It's going to be obviously Zen demoing how we envision kind of Pixie to be used by developers, but Kelsey demoing kind of Pixie's impact to the overall industry. So talking about the extensibility of the platform.
So Kelsey Hightower, of course, is a friend. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Kelsey more than a few times over the years. What's his involvement with Pixie?
Yeah, so he's officially an advisor to Pixie Labs. He got involved in the community, him being Kelsey, kind of tapping into kind of interesting projects kind of early last year. That would be the case. And then we said like, hey, Kelsey, we really would love to kind of continue collaborating. So he spends a few hours a week with us. He's gotten super engaged. He attends our community calls, and he's been basically fundamental in us thinking about a community strategy.
He would know from community. I would highly advise you to take his advice. Guys, hey, first of all, I want to wish you best of luck with Pixie and Pixie Labs. Sounds exciting. You're in the right space, certainly, and hopefully at the right time. Please come back. Keep us advised of the growth and new developments. And thanks for being with us on TechStrong TV today.
Absolutely.
All right. Zain, Ishant, thank you very much. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We're going to be right back with our next guest. Up next, again, with the third annual DevOps experience coming up on October 22nd, I wanted to take a look back to last year's DevOps experience, and this is the third of the 4 keynotes from last year. This one features Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who at the time was at Google Cloud, and Nicole is now with actually GitHub. But her keynote last year was around performance, productivity, and culture. Oh my! It was based on some of the key findings from the 2019 DORA survey, and of course, Nicole was a driving force behind that. Let's now go to Dr. Nicole Forsgren from DevOps Experience 2019.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I will be talking about performance and productivity and culture. Oh my! So I am Dr. Nicole Forsgren. I run research and strategy, and I lead the DORA team. Now we are with Google Cloud. So let's dig into it. So you may have heard of the DORA team. We have been running the State of DevOps reports. I've been leading the research for 6 years. It's been summarized in the book Accelerate. That covers the research from years 2014 to 2017. We also did the Accelerate State of DevOps report in 2018, and today we will be talking about some of my favorite findings from the 2019 report. I say some of my favorite findings because we did a lot. So let's dig into it. Today we'll be talking about, is this DevOps thing even a thing, which we still have debates about. We'll talk about getting better, aka choose your own adventure. We'll talk about performance, we'll talk about productivity, we'll talk about culture, and then we'll wrap this whole thing up. So, DevOps, okay, let's get on the same page, which is important for me as a researcher because if I'm going to be measuring something or talking about something, we really need to know what we're talking about. So, what we'll be talking about when I talk about DevOps, I'm talking about developing and delivering software with speed and stability. See how that just rolls off the tongue? Okay, for me it does because I've been doing this for 6 years. So, many in the industry have been talking about 4 key metrics. What that is 2 speed metrics and 2 stability metrics. The speed metrics are in green. So that's lead time, how long it takes to go from code committed to code running in production. And then deployment frequency, how often you push code. Our stability metrics are change fail rate, the percentage of times that you push code to production that it results in any type of incident, so it's not just epic failures. And then time to restore service. If you do have any type of incident, how long it takes your code to come back up. Those are our 4 key metrics. Now, many organizations in the industry right now are using these 4 metrics to track their progress on their transformations, whether they want to call them DevOps transformations or technology transformations or digital transformations. Use a find and replace depending on what your executives or your board loves. Okay, now we also have availability. That's our secret 5th white horse. So keep that in the back of your head. We'll come back to that in a second. So based on these 4 key metrics, what do we see? We have movement. Here's what we've seen in our industry. Take a look at our elite performers. As we track this from 2018 to 2019, our elite performers were a subset of our high performers. They were 7%. As we see what happened from 2018 to 2019, that group almost tripled, and they actually broke out to become their very own performance group. Now take a look at our low performers. That group shrunk. They went from 15% of our population to, or our sample, sorry, for those stats heads that are about to yell at me. It's okay, I'm on track. They went from 15% to 12%. Now take a look at our medium performers. They got bigger. Some from our low performers that moved up, some from our high performers that moved down. Ooh, okay. This is actually really encouraging. What this tells us is that execution is possible, high performance is possible, improvement is possible for anyone, right? It just requires execution on our key capabilities. Now, some people are like, but Nicole, you just said medium performers got bigger and it wasn't just from low performers getting better. Yes, because we have to keep getting better. We can't just arrive and declare things done and then sit back and chill. I know, this is so discouraging. No, this is exciting. This means that we get to keep getting better. Technology is fun. Technology is interesting. There's always new challenges, right? There's more for all of us. Okay, so what does this actually mean, and how do I do this work? We collect these 4 metrics, and then we throw them into the hopper. And I run this analysis separately every single year to see how the industry is changing, how it's moving. For our elite performers, we see independently for 6 years in a row now, they're able to optimize on all 4 measures. Speed and stability moved together. So deployment frequency is on demand. Lead time for changes is less than a day. This did slip a little bit this year. We think it's because our high performers in particular are, well, everyone honestly, but especially our higher performers are probably reacting to complexity by introducing change approvals and processes. Our time to restore service is less than an hour, and our change fail rate is 0 to 15%. Now take a look at our low performers. In contrast, that deployment frequency is between 1 and 6 months. Lead time for changes is between 1 and 6 months. Time to restore service is between a week and a month, and that change fail rate is 46 to 60%. Remember how I said speed and stability move together? It's not just at the high end, it's also at the low end. And again, we've observed this. For 6 years in a row now, they move in tandem. So when I compare our highest and our lowest performers, we see that we see 208 times more frequent code deployments, 106 times faster lead time from commit to deploy, over 2,600 times faster time to recover from incidents, and 7 times lower change fail rate. So what does that mean for all of us? Why do we even care? Yes, it means that we can deliver features faster to our customers and our end users. But we need to think about this holistically. This also means that we can keep up with compliance and regulatory changes. This means that we can patch our infrastructure faster. This means that we can keep up with security incidents faster. This really does help us deliver value, but it also allows us to deliver quality and security. This really is value delivery in like a holistic sense of the word. It's so much better for our organizations as a whole and our end users as a whole. Remember availability? Availability is that other piece. It's about the promises that we make and keep to our customers. This is how we measure it. It's how well teams define their availability targets, track their current availability, and learn from any outages. So software speed and stability is about how well we develop and deliver software. Availability is about how well we keep it up. Because day one is short, but day two is long. So we really need to keep that up. And what we found for the last 2 years, availability is a new measure that we added last year. Availability, we've seen in our research, really helps us explain better and predict better organizational performance, which really is important. And it makes sense, right? Because it's about the promises we make and keep to our customers and our end users. So of course that helps us explain that better. So we do tech because it's fun. Well, I mean, yeah, that's why I went into tech. And yes, and there's so much more here to it, right? As I was just mentioning, technology delivers value. Elite performers are twice as likely to meet or exceed their organizational performance goals. We found this throughout the 6 years of our research. So when I say organizational performance goals, again, this is kind of a holistic measure. This captures commercial performance goals, like this is the money piece, right? So profitability, productivity, market share. This also covers what we call like non-commercial performance goals, things like effectiveness, efficiency, customer satisfaction, delivering on mission goals. So those of us in the government and not-for-profit space will probably recognize that phrasing really well. So delivering value to our constituents, right? So technology really allows us to deliver what it is that we need to do. And that's important. Okay, so it matters. How do we get better? It's interesting because so often people will say, well, speed and stability, right? Like I can't just go faster and have like stability come along. They didn't just say that we just fly off the rails. We know through 6 years of research now that there are key capabilities through technical, automation, process, culture that are predictive of improvement. And some people are like, wait, this sounds like DevOps or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah, so how do we do this? This is how we do it. This is the Choose Your Own Adventure portion of the program. So for 6 years now, we've talked about SDO and organizational performance, right? The speed and stability part. This year we added productivity. And so when we go through and we look at the models, we can look at things that help us improve our performance, the little levers that we can turn, things that are predictive. So what does this look like? Things like the culture, right? Organizational culture of organizational performance and psychological safety. Change management, we investigated this year. This is new, although it's a throwback to the first report I was on in 2014. Cloud, we reinvestigated this year. This was a revalidation from last year. Technical practices we dig into every year. And then a new one this year, disaster recovery testing. If you want to look at productivity, this is brand new this year. Culture, of course, is predictive. We also looked at useful, easy-to-use tools, internal, external search, and technical debt. So we'll take a look at these. Let's start with improving performance. So this is the model. I'm sure it's pretty straightforward. Maybe I'll take a minute and walk us through it. Improving performance. So how do we read this model? Anytime you see a green box, this is a construct. So a construct is a thing that we want to measure. Now what's different in Dora's research is that any time we measure a construct, we make sure that we measure it in a statistically rigorous way. So for anyone who takes the survey, thank you so much, I love you. We have lots of questions because we want to make sure that we measure in ways that only measure what we're measuring. We don't measure what we don't want to measure. And everyone that reads it consistently reads it and understands it in the same way. And I go through like 4 or 5 statistical tests to ensure all of those things. So that's what a green box is. So you can see we have several green boxes. If it's in bold, that means it's something that is newly investigated this year. So things like disaster recovery testing, that's new. Things like monitoring, we've tested in previous years. Now, if it's in a light blue box, this is a control variable. So things like industry is a control variable. So we want to make sure that industry doesn't have an effect. Spoiler alert, we do see some difference in industry. Who thinks there's a difference by industry? Every year people think there's a difference. This is the first year we see a difference by industry. And what we see is that there is no statistical difference by industry except for one. And that difference is for retail. And we actually see that retail performs better. So dig into the report to see why we think that is. We also check for enterprise, and we see that enterprises perform statistically differently, and they perform a little bit worse. And we think that that's for two reasons. One is for additional change process, additional controls, which slow them down and increase instability, and because of more tightly coupled architectures, which we also see. Okay, so we also take a look at, we highlight common goals. So common goals here are things like SDO performance and organizational performance. We only do that to draw your eye there in case you want to plan improvement initiatives at your organization. So SDO performance is speed and stability, software delivery performance and availability, also organizational performance. So you may say, I want to improve speed and stability and availability. How do I improve that? Anytime you see a line and an arrow, that can be read as predicts, impacts, and drives. So our research also goes beyond just correlation. So let's say we want to improve software delivery performance, speed, and stability. Things that will improve that are culture of psychological safety, clear change process, heavyweight change process, but you'll notice it has a minus there. So heavyweight change process negatively impacts or reduces speed and stability. Other things that impact this are continuous delivery and use of the cloud. So that's how you read the model here. You'll also see, if you want to read it the other way, what does continuous delivery improve? Continuous delivery improves culture. It improves software delivery performance. It improves availability. It also negatively improves or reduces burnout. That's how you can read the model. Okay, so moving on. Let's dig into a couple. Cloud. Cloud is fun. We have revalidated this year, which means that we studied it again. So we first studied it last year. We see cloud's a differentiator for elite performance, but like what? Sometimes people say, well, of course it is. And some people are like, but what do you mean? I talk to developers or operations people, they're like, well, we implemented the cloud, nothing changed. Or I talk to executives, they're like, well, I did the cloud and like, I don't see the performance gains. I'm like, so did you actually implement the cloud and make changes, or did you actually implement the cloud, or did you only write the check? So when you do cloud, you need to be doing 5 things. And by the way, I didn't make these up. These come from NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. So here's what they are. On-demand self-service. Can't put it behind a ServiceNow ticket and wait 2 weeks for someone to approve. Broad network access, all devices. Resource pooling. A rapid elasticity, bursting like magic. Measured service. Only pay for what you use. What we find is that of the people who say they're in the cloud, only 29% of respondents met all 5 characteristics of cloud computing. And elite performers are 24 times more likely to have met all 5 cloud characteristics than our low performers. So again, excellence is possible, we just have to execute. I mean, I can pay for a gym membership, but if I don't go, I'm not going to get the benefits. Here's what else we see. Okay, read the report. Nicole, what else is new? Here's how we can improve productivity. Again, we read it the exact same way. Green boxes are constructs. Anything in bold is new, and almost everything here is new this year to our report. We put a dark, bold line around productivity because this is a common goal in organizations, although notice it's not the end of the model. Improving productivity also improves work recovery. This is detaching from work, work-life balance, which also reduces burnout. You'll notice our control variable here is years of experience. We see no statistical significance here. So whether you are new at work or you have seniority in years of experience at that, we don't see any difference, which is really interesting. So how do you improve productivity? Stronger culture, good, useful, easy-to-use tools, strong internal and external search, and then technical debt hurts productivity, so improving technical debt can help. But what is productivity? this is really interesting because there are lots of debates here. Are we talking about lines of code? Are we talking about story points? Both of those are actually really bad because lines of code leads to bloat and more technical debt. Story points can lead to conflicts because if I have story points to finish and you have story points to finish, we aren't going to help each other out because I can't finish my story points. So lots of researchers right now are actually converging on a definition where productivity is the ability to get complex, time-consuming tasks completed with minimal distractions and interruptions. Another way to think about it is, can I get into a really good workflow? Can I get some good work done? Because then when I go home, I can shut my brain off, even if I still have work to do, because I feel like I got some good work completed. In contrast, think about days where for some reason you were busy all day long, but you didn't get anything done. It's hard to shut your brain off. This is important because this type of productivity helps us leave work at work and reduce burnout. So let's think about technical debt. Technical debt reduces productivity. It's a problem for so many of us. And so this is how it's defined. And I worked with a research team at Google on this, and I looked through a lot of the literature to make sure we come up with a really good definition and a really good measure of it. This may seem familiar. Known bugs that go unfixed in favor of shipping new features, insufficient test coverage, problems related to low-code quality and poor design, code or artifacts that don't go cleaned up when they're no longer used. Sometimes the best code is code that's deleted. Implementations that the team doesn't have expertise in, so we can't debug and maintain it. Incomplete migration, obsolete technology, and incomplete or outdated documentation or missing comments. Yes, documentation can be tech debt, because if we can't maintain it, it's just cruft. So to reduce technical debt, there are a few things we can do. Refactoring is for sure a good practice, and Martin Fowler just put out a second edition of his refactoring book. But there are also some good practices and some good tools that companies can make to help us out. One is maintainable code. This is a new construct that we identified this year, and it's systems and tools that help us search our code, find code, reuse code, and understand the implications of changing code, like the downstream effects of changing code. So that's super important because it helps us understand the system. Loosely coupled architecture is also super important because it helps limit the changes of our code, right? Making changes in a huge monolithic code base can have long-term downstream effects. Also monitoring. Good monitoring systems help us see and understand the changes of what we're making in the code base. So what else? I keep hearing culture matters, allegedly, but what does that even mean? So for the first 5 years of our research, we looked into Westrum's organizational culture measure, which we found is very important, but we wanted to dig into another measure. And as we all know, if you ask 4 people what they mean by culture, you'll get 12 answers, right? So this year we dug into a measure of culture that was studied by a group of researchers at Google. And when they originally did their research, they thought that what would make the most effective team was the perfect mix of skills. Turns out what really matters is team dynamics, and far and above it was psychological safety. Team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable. They can depend on each other, their work has structure and clarity and meaning, and it makes impact. This was really interesting, and many of us thought this was great, but also there were some questions where people said, I wonder if this will also hold true outside of Google, right? Because Google just has its own culture and its own set of contexts. So many thanks to the Project Aristotle team. They shared their instrument with us, and we were able to test this in the State of DevOps survey. And what we found was that indeed, culture is important. This culture of trust and psychological safety indeed has a positive predictive impact on software delivery performance, the speed and stability, organizational performance, and productivity. And this indicates that teams with this type of culture see significant benefits in many contexts, in many organizations. So yay for science, right? It was great that we were able to test this in many cultures and in many type of contexts. So here's your TLDR. Take a quick picture in case you were busy on Twitter or Facebook instead. Here's your credit. Here's what we talked about. Is this DevOps thing even a thing? It is. And as many analysts have been reporting, DevOps has crossed the chasm. We see many organizations adopting this, seeing great value. It just requires execution on your key capabilities. I'm not saying it's easy, but we are seeing evidence that it's worth it. We also talked about getting better and how to get better. And now we can talk about a couple of different ways to get better. First with performance, speed and stability of software development delivery. Also with productivity. Then we touched on culture. We're done now. But by the way, you should check out the report because there's so much more. There's disaster recovery testing. And by the way, only 40% of people in the industry are even doing this annually, which terrifies me. There's so much more to do. There's stuff in there about change approvals and the right way to do them. There's more stuff on cloud and how cloud changes costs. We've got a whole section on there and a great sidebar that Corey Quinn helped us with. We also have an entire section on scaling transformation successfully. So please go check it out. If you go to cloud.google.com/DevOps, we've got this report. We've got all the previous reports, and we've got entire sections that dig into all of our key capabilities. So thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you around soon.
Thanks very much to Nicole for keynoting last year. Next, we are going to go over to the news to see what's new and happening around the media ops world. Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, has that. And then Charlene will be interviewing Matan Tesler of Odonomo. And then a great preview of this week's Media Ops webinars and what we have in store. So now let's go over to our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with the Tuesday headlines for you. First up on DevOps.com, we take a look at the growing use of APIs in development and the corresponding need to secure them. With 23,000 plus APIs currently available and a market value of estimated to be more than 5 billion, that's billion with a B, by 2023, it's clear APIs have taken hold in organizations. But with that popularity comes a plethora of security vulnerabilities that can put said organizations at risk. So this article takes a look at the biggest threats and the top ways that organizations can secure their APIs. And speaking of security, we have an article about the security implications of low code. As I mentioned before, low code is becoming a development methodology of choice in helping organizations accelerate their digital transformation processes, but many low code platforms actually use JavaScript. So to understand the security implications of low code, you first have to understand the security implications of JavaScript. So that's what this article is about. It's definitely worth checking out if your organization is using low code in any part of its development environment. We also have news from content delivery network provider Cloudflare, which has made available a durable objects capability in beta that makes it possible to run stateful applications across a distributed serverless Cloudflare worker service. This approach actually helps reduce application latency, according to the company, and as more computing is pushed to the edge of the network, there is a growing need to deploy stateful applications that process data closer to where it is generated and consumed. So low latency is a must to ensure high-performant applications and a high-quality user experience. On Container Journal, Kubler has updated its namesake platform for managing Kubernetes clusters to add support for both spot and on-demand instances of AWS public cloud, as well as version 1.18 of Kubernetes. IT organizations now have a single interface to manage Kubernetes clusters across mixed instances of AWS to reduce costs. This also puts the capability of Kubernetes cluster management in the hands of IT administrators, rather than a company having to hire a site reliability engineer, which can help the organization save money. We also have an interesting primer on how organizations can use containers and Kubernetes in their DevSecOps. The buzz around containers and Kubernetes in particular has been growing, especially around how they can help organizations shift left their security efforts in the development process. This article takes a look at why containers and Kubernetes are so useful in making a move to DevSecOps, not just in improving container security, but also in improving the speed and accuracy of development. Over on Security Boulevard, Sue Paremba has a piece on SMB security. Her take is that small and medium-sized businesses aren't doing enough to protect themselves because they tend to only back up their data. What they really should be doing, though, is backing up their entire infrastructure. Backing up data, security architecture, and network configurations is even more crucial during this global pandemic as a means to ensure business continuity, limit downtime, and recovery from a data breach. We also have an article on the importance of remote audits during the work-from-home era. With the organizations working more from home and compliance remaining mandatory, the ability to complete audits remotely is more important now than ever before, both for the business value of compliance and efficiency, which is the cost and the flexibility of the approach. Fortunately, the majority of regulatory bodies are now allowing remote audits. So this article looks at which ones are and what organizations need to do to remain compliant when employees are working remotely. Okay, that's all we have for the Tuesday edition of the news headlines. Please check back on Thursday for what we've got going on the sites. And meanwhile, please continue to check the sites daily and often, as we always have new content coming on the sites. Until then, this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I want everybody to stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with a gentleman by the name of Matan Tesler, who is the vice president of product at a company called, is it Autonomo or Autonomo? Which is
Autonomo.
Autonomo. See, I was totally
Autonomo.
off with that. Sorry about that. Autonomo, which is a connected car data services platform. So I want to talk to you about this because I think it's a fascinating use case for low-code technology. And so I'm wondering if, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Of course, and thank you for having me here. So Autonomo is a connected car data platform. Mm-hmm. A connected car is a car that generates data through its sensors and then transmits this data back to the OEM, the manufacturer of the car, or to a fleet that owns the car. And Autonomo enables companies to build apps and services which are powered by such data. And the data comes in two main forms. The first one is aggregate data, where the specific vehicle does not matter, but the trends are. And we're talking about bulks of millions of data points oftentimes that are being used for a specific algorithm or anything like that. Or it can be identifiable data that powers fleets and developers of personal direct-to-consumer services to improve drivers' experience and lives.
All right, great. So you guys are using no-code / low-code technology as part of your platform, correct?
Right.
How are you guys doing that? How are you guys using it?
So our platform is first and foremost an API platform. So basically, we have tons of data. We ingest around 4 billion data points every day. and make it available for different data consumers, our customers. But we see that it's not that trivial to access huge amounts of data. And it takes, if we only offer the API, so it takes, you need to be pretty savvy to be able to use that. So basically, whatever we provide via the API, we try to also provide in a low-code manner. So it will be easier for other people in the organization to extract value faster and basically be able to explore this maybe a new data set that is now available to the world.
That's really fascinating. I love the idea of this, especially when you think about the connected cars and not just connecting back to the manufacturer, to the fleets, as you said, but also perhaps in interacting with smart city technology, or just being able to connect with, say, I don't know, power suppliers, such as, the electric cars, being able to know where the next power source is, things like that. It really does open up an entire new world of possibilities for this whole area in general. But I do actually wonder about the security of having a low code, like an API or a low code solution for something that, it's a connected car, which means that obviously it's going to be connected to many, many different points on the network. So, is security an issue for this? I mean, is this something that organizations kind of need to keep in mind also?
Yeah, so security is a very important aspect. Security and privacy, I would say, are very important aspects of car data. And for us, Autonomo is a completely cloud-based platform. So we are not part of the car. We don't have access to the data in the car. We get access from the OEM cloud and onwards. And on our side, obviously, we keep data secured with all the available means. But we also make sure that any whether it's aggregate data or identifiable data, we provide very strong tools to make sure that the data is secured and compliant with regards to the relevant privacy. So if we talk about identifiable data, for example, we are the ones that provide a full solution for consent management to make sure that, starting with the driver or the vehicle owner, the OEM, and the application that eventually gets data, such as a fleet management software or an insurance company that gets the data in order to offer the driver pay how you drive insurance model. So everybody comply with the regulation, and we are the one that facilitate this consent process.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So what would you consider to be kind of the major benefit to this approach of extracting data? And, are there possibly certain areas within an organization that would benefit more from this? Or is it maybe opening up a new avenue of opportunity for organizations?
Yes. So we see many different use cases that significantly benefit from having access to car data. You mentioned before smart cities, which can basically increase safety and reduce the number of accidents, and also improve traffic. And we see many different types of traffic management solutions. We see fleet solutions, different types of fleet solutions, whether they just let you manage your fleet or even offer you types of specific tire pressure management solution to make sure that your drivers will never experience a red light signaling that you don't have enough air, like pressure in your tire. So we see different use cases all around that benefit from car data. But one of the challenges is how to enable people to explore this data and discover what's available in the data. because everybody needs different types of data and different attributes. And this is where the platform that we offer and the low code capabilities of the platform enable more and more people in different roles touch this data and be able to explore it. And this is how we see that the data propagates and eventually services are being built faster and with greater, I think that even with greater business value, because early on in the process, also the business folks can understand the true value of the data.
All right, great. I imagine it also kind of opens up access by third parties to, to do kind of those value adds, if you will, to the connected car that maybe necessarily don't have a whole lot to do with the actual car itself, but maybe features that are included in or just telemetry data that can be used, as you said, by insurance companies, things like that. So I totally see lots and lots of opportunity for this. So does this have any useful application or your platform or just the low-code technology in general for kind of connected systems? Where do you kind of see the value of this particular technology, beyond your immediate use case, which is the connected cars? I mean, are we going to be seeing more connected technologies using low-code applications?
I think that's a great question. I don't know if I have the right answer for that, but I think that we have a case here where a new data set is becoming available, as in many different domains. These days, we're talking about big data that technology enables basically to be collected and made available. And in these cases, whenever the business needs are not necessarily tightly coupled with extracting the data, you need to enable the different types of users to explore the data. So I think that as a general model, if the more people you enable to touch the data and be able to discover and explore the data that you provide, it increases the chances for true value creation. And this is what we are trying to do.
Excellent. Well, we could go on and on about this technology. I think it's really, really fascinating. But unfortunately, we're going to have to close this out. But Matan, thank you so much for taking the time and walking me through what your technology is enabling and kind of your thoughts on low code in general. Really, really fascinating stuff. So thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up. So stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with the Tuesday edition of the webinars previews. We have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com and Security Boulevard. We also have a lot of webinars that we've done already that are in the on-demand section on the website. So please do yourselves a favor, take a minute or two and check out the webinars that we have both upcoming and on demand on the sites. But meanwhile, I wanted to let you know about 3 of them that are coming up this week. First one is called How LivePerson Takes Cloud Native DevSecOps to the Next Level. This one is happening Wednesday, October 7th at 9 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. So those of you on the West Coast are going to have to get up early for this one. This webinar is sponsored by WhiteSource, and it's a case study that shows how microservices development, as the microservices development environment becomes more popular in cloud-based companies, the CI/CD pipelines are actually changing to integrate security tools. That's easy for me to say, and so companies such as Pipeline are able to shift left to DevSecOps and build better quality and more secure applications. So this is as I said, it's a case study that shows how LivePerson has done that. And I'm sure there are lots of key takeaways that any organization can use to incorporate DevSecOps by shifting their security left in the CI/CD pipeline. Next one I want to let you know about is called GitOps on AWS, Managing Governance, Risk, and Compliance for Kubernetes on EKS. This one is also happening Wednesday, October 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it's sponsored by Weaveworks. So this one looks at how GitOps can help Kubernetes adoption by addressing some of the security concerns that organizations have in using it in their production environment. So the webinar will address and offer a demo, and you know how much I love the demos, how GitOps workflows provide separation of concerns between development and deployment. They automate transparency and auditability at all levels. Isolate authentication and authorization between concerns, and reduce risk through rollback and logging. Definitely one worth checking out if you are using AWS and Kubernetes and you are concerned about security. All right, the last one I want to let you know about is happening on Thursday, October 8th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It's called Speed in CI/CD, Get Faster to Get Better. This one is sponsored by Liquibase, and it delves into the fallacy that speed is the main goal of CI/CD, that the entire process can be better if it's faster. Actually, to achieve speed, organizations must simplify, lighten, and improve the thing that they're trying to make fast. So this, and if it's done correctly, that can be just as expensive. If it's not done correctly, it can be just as expensive. So this webinar takes a look at how organizations can eliminate the needless complexity and add smart automation to improve their velocity. If you are looking to address issues related to speed in your CI/CD pipeline, definitely give this one a look. It is going to be worth your time. All right, that's all I have for this edition of the webinars preview. Please check back on Thursday for the next edition of the webinars preview. Until then, please stay safe.
Thanks, Charlene. Great stuff there. Well, now it's time on the show for the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. Mitchell's guest today is my friend Shang Liang, CEO founder Rancher Labs, or co-founder of Rancher Labs, which was recently acquired by SUSE, and good stuff happening there. Shang has some big news he's breaking with Mitchell. Let's head over now to Mitchell Ashley.
Welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. So we have a really good interview today. I'm excited to have you take a look at with Rancher Labs CEO. And that's coming up right after this. There's some announcements that they have going on that I definitely know you'll find interesting. So please stick around and check that out. The thing I wanted to bring up today, and it kind of ties into some of the things that Rancher is announcing, is we've been having some internal discussions about the cloud and about software and why microservices, why that's the architecture sort of the day, and clusters and Kubernetes and containers, container management, Docker, things like that. And it was really interesting to me that one of my strengths finder, if you follow that sort of personality assessment tool, is context, which I kind of like to look at things into why have things gotten to the way they are, then where are they going from there? And it's just as a way of me putting together problems and understanding it better, see if I can kind of connect the dots. And so that question of why is really important to answer, and that context is what helps with that. And so we've been having some internal discussions about containers and container management and cloud and all of those kind of things, and having the perspective of both a product CTO and also of a CIO, having managed the transition to cloud, transition to DevOps. This whole, these things fit so well together to me. Sort of one doesn't really happen without the other. I mean, would you have microservices if you didn't have containers? Would you have containers if you didn't really have the need for that kind of capacity, scalability, and a way to do that without, frankly, the availability of resources in the cloud? So some nice, really interconnection with that. So as you hear Sheng Liang, who's the CEO with Rancher Labs, talking today about some of their announcements, I hope you'll take some time to kind of think about that interconnection of the software architectures that we're using, the technologies, and why we're doing that way, as well as the things that the cloud have enabled. Because I think, to me, that along with DevOps, those are all game changers, and I think why it's such an exciting time to be in our industry. So enjoy the interview.
This is Digital Anarchist.
I'm joined by Sheng Liang, who is CEO and co-founder of Rancher Labs. He's with me today. Welcome. Good to be talking with you, Sheng.
Thank you, Mitch. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm sure many of our audience are familiar with the Rancher Labs and some of the great stuff that you do, but tell us, you're CEO and co-founder. We can imagine what your job is, but tell us a little bit of your background, and then tell us about Rancher Labs for those that don't know.
Yeah, we started Rancher Labs because we saw, containers and Kubernetes were rapidly becoming a standard in application packaging and infrastructure, really. And these days, you can, applications are pretty much always packaged as containers before they're distributed, and you can get a Kubernetes cluster everywhere. We in our industry, for as long as I've been in this industry, we've kind of always struggled with lack of homogeneity in compute platforms. You got different cloud platforms, you got hybrid cloud, which never quite work because on-premise never quite deliver the same experience as in the cloud. And really, for the first time, we have this consistent compute platform that works from data center to the cloud and potentially to the edge. And then you have these, portable application packages that's shipped as software containers, and now they can run anywhere. So that's tremendously exciting. And we started Rancher Labs to develop a open source software platform so that organizations, largely enterprise organizations, anyone who develops and deploys software can just take advantage of technologies like Kubernetes.
That has been the vision for so long, right? Right, software that can run on anywhere on any platform. If we're quite there at that, but certainly a huge advance with containers and what your role in the ecosystem too as well. Talk a little bit about your computing everywhere strategy. I think that's what you're describing, is it not?
That's right. You mean you're spot on. This vision has really been there from everywhere, from a long time ago. I mean, my first job out of out of school was at Sun Microsystems working on Java virtual machines. So back then we talked about
Java was going to
everywhere.
solve all the problems for the world, right?
Yeah, but everything comes with some constraints, right? Java's notion of run once, write once, run everywhere is that you'd use that one particular language and then build a virtual machine to make it happen.
Runtime environment,
and then
JRE.
The industry progressed, and I think Kubernetes and containers is probably the latest effort in achieving that goal. And compute everywhere is it's not really a vision anymore. It's basically a statement of fact. Computing is happening everywhere. The trick is, what is going to be the platform that powers it? We all know it's not going to be one platform, because there's device side, client side, and that's clearly going to be different from the server side, right? So let's talk about the server side. What is that platform going to be? For a while we thought it was going to be LampStack, but maybe it was going to be Linux, maybe it was going to be Windows, .NET, and I think I really think at this point Kubernetes and containers is probably really the best portable runtime engine and application packaging standard to help us realize that vision. It's still not for every type of application. If you have a client-side application, you're clearly not going to package it. You don't really need to package it up as a container. But for majority of these business applications, server-side applications, internet applications that actually need to be developed quickly and deployed quickly, need to follow the agile development cycle, need to be operated with DevOps and SREs. I think Kubernetes and containers are rapidly becoming a standard.
A question about that, and I appreciate your thinking around the portability part of this. It seems like another driver. I'm interested in your experience with the market, people who are using your open source, using your commercial product. There's also the drive to kind of miniaturization in software, if you will. Create things in much smaller packages, build them into microservices, in part to be able to deliver smaller pieces of software much more rapidly without having to, I guess the opposite would be the old monolith systems.
Right.
But what do you find is the driver to containers? Is it more that portability and flexibility there? Is it the drive behind trying to release software more quickly and kind of manage what the level of changes in your applications?
Yeah, you definitely hear a lot of talk about, miniaturization, modularization, microservices in the container world. And it's a big driver, and it's especially relevant in very large organizations who develop very, very sophisticated software. But I still believe, and that's a piece of value that's very much complementary. They're not in conflict with the portability and consistency and challenge, right? And I don't think so. So I think those two things actually strengthen each other. They're not necessarily in conflict.
True, they are complementary.
Yeah, they're definitely complementary for sure. But I still think for the nice thing about Kubernetes and Docker containers is they're adopted at very much of a grassroots level. They don't really have to be a enterprise-wide or a standard on day one, and they don't need to be adopted by large organizations before they can be adopted by smaller organizations. So I actually think, in some sense, the portability, consistency benefit is more immediate than the modularity and microservices benefit. But you're absolutely right. I think both matters. And once you get, then there's other benefits. There's reliability. Once you have Kubernetes, it kind of solves a lot of the clustering and scalability challenges for you. So reliability, scalability, backup, disaster recovery. security, all these things. It has a very good set of ecosystem integrations that do, that take care of monitoring and alerting, which again ties into reliability. So it is a much more comprehensive set of benefits. But I still think everything kind of starts with portability, and and everything else follows.
I imagine why that might be. So let's. You just had an announcement around Rancher Labs 2.0, Rancher 2.5. Tell us a little bit about this exciting announcement.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Rancher and and what we're doing in the latest release, because Rancher is not Kubernetes. Rancher is something built on Kubernetes. So in our view of the world, the sort of the ideal computing environment for an enterprise would be you leverage Kubernetes from everywhere. Kubernetes is consistent, right? You can use Amazon and you run Kubernetes on Amazon. You run vSphere in your data center, but you might as well install Kubernetes on your vSphere clusters or your bare metal clusters, because now you have everything the same. Now you still have some servers or machines in your branch offices, and you can install Kubernetes there as well. And now you're going to have Kubernetes running on the edge. And what Rancher is it's really a platform that allows you to do that and manages all of your Kubernetes clusters, regardless where they are. So as a company, we've been working on two fronts. One is we create this thing called Kubernetes distro that enable organizations to stand up and operate Kubernetes clusters everywhere. So these days, everywhere pretty much means data center and edge nodes. So in the data center, we have a Kubernetes distro called RKE, Rancher Kubernetes Engine. And on the edge, we have a Kubernetes distro called K3S, which is probably the most exciting and popular open source project in the Kubernetes ecosystem today. And then we've generally gotten out of the Kubernetes distro business in the cloud, because cloud providers are very good at supporting Kubernetes for their own cloud. They not only provide you with the Kubernetes distro software, they will actually operate Kubernetes cluster for you, essentially for free. So there's just no reason if you're on Amazon not to just use EKS out of the box.
It seems like a wise decision, Zheng, because Amazon EKS, VMware has their own. I mean, it seems like everybody has a Kubernetes distro, and some of those companies, the cloud providers, have their own strategies for doing it. I think others like VMware and others providing their own distro. It's their way of kind of getting into the application stack, right?
Yeah, and we should support them all,
exactly, because you don't want to be in the place if you have to replace your distro with ours to get our management capability.
I really think Kubernetes is the standard, right? Like sometimes I make an analogy like Kubernetes is the TCP/IP standard of computing, and it's like, with TCP/IP, every computer comes with, say, that Ethernet port, and there, doesn't matter who made it, doesn't matter who made that NIC card, but there's a huge opportunity to create, networks, switches, and routers, and internet, and eventually you tie all that stuff together, right? Then you start to deploy content and services. So I think we're almost at that stage, with Kubernetes as a computing standard as well, and that's why we're not quite there. That's why Rancher is actually still in the business of creating Kubernetes clusters. Even speaking of VMware, I fully expect at some point Kubernetes cluster will be a turnkey out of the box thing that you can just get out of vSphere clusters. But even today, it's actually not quite that easy. Not as easy as you get a Kubernetes cluster on the cloud. So Rancher Kubernetes Engine is still a very, very popular option for our customers to deploy Kubernetes clusters on vSphere, amazingly. So we have a very good business, doing Kubernetes distros in data center, which includes bare metal servers and vSphere, and we're very, very fast growing business doing Kubernetes clusters on the edge based on K3S technology that we developed. And then we have, this Rancher management system that ties all the Kubernetes clusters together, provide a unified computing platform. So that could be Kubernetes clusters from Rancher, from Amazon EKS, or from Google GKE, or from VMware in the future. So that's our complete offering. And we've been doing this since our 2.0 product that shipped more than 2 years ago, back in 2018. It's been tremendously successful, used every day by tens of thousands of organizations, and many of them have since turned into paying customers. So we have a very, very fast growing business, growing at way north of triple digit percentage growth year over year. So and then recently there's been an announcement that we got acquired by SUSE, which is tremendously exciting. The deal hasn't closed.
Congratulations on that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are as the whole product. And specifically for 2.5, I mean, Rancher is a fairly mature product. Since our business is growing so fast, we've been adding resources onto the team fairly quickly as well. So I'm really excited because it does feel like not only the market is maturing, but our development velocity is also getting faster and faster. So just give you an idea of some of the things we're working on. With 2.5, really for the first time, Rancher itself now could be installed on any Kubernetes cluster. In the past, people kind of had to, get a bunch of VMs or physical servers. You install Rancher, and then you use that. Rancher is essentially install an Exchange server. Then you kind of use that to manage a bunch of other Kubernetes clusters. But internally, we actually built Rancher on Kubernetes. Rancher itself actually used Kubernetes as its middleware. Traditionally, we ship Kubernetes with Rancher, and then you kind of install it in one shot. And going forward, you can get any kind of Kubernetes cluster, and you install Rancher on top of it. So Rancher itself is getting even more modular, more like a microservice, thinner, and it'll just work everywhere. If you have an EKS cluster, or if you even have a DIY, homegrown cluster, you can just install Rancher on top of it, and it'll start to function and add a much better dashboard. It'll add much better operation support, like monitoring and alerts. It'll add a rich application catalog that enables you to leverage all the ISV relationships that Rancher has established. So it's now we can basically very quickly add value onto any cluster out of the box, which is the key.
A couple of things I'm wondering, and I think you were going down the road on one of them, is what about existing installations of whatever distribution of Kubernetes? Sorry, and bringing that under the Rancher umbrella. Mm-hmm. And then the second half of that would be thinking the other direction. Can you deploy any various versions, distros of Kubernetes?
Yeah, that's right.
So you can say, here's my distro, go send it out.
Talk about the existing, any sort of existing Kubernetes distro you have. We can basically now install Rancher right on top of it. And because the nice thing about Kubernetes is, as long as it's CNCF certified, it's compliant, they basically operate the same way. They're really like, if you have an Ethernet port, you plug a cable into it, you kind of
same interfaces to it, APIs, etc.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. And Rancher has built-in capabilities to deploy all kinds of Kubernetes clusters. Not just Kubernetes clusters created by Rancher, but if you say you created your own Kubernetes cluster using your own scripts, you can just import it into a Rancher distro, register with Rancher, and then Rancher would manage it from that point on. Mm-hmm. That's another area we're making a huge amount of enhancement in 2.5. Like historically, these Kubernetes clusters that you create yourself, you can import it into Rancher. Rancher would actually add values on top, will give you a better UI, would allow you to deploy applications. But we weren't really doing very much in terms of helping you operate these clusters, because we don't really know which cluster, which actual distribution you use, right? So to operate it, you actually kind of go back to the native tools that you use. But starting from 2.5, we're now actually embarking, people as our customers, users have told us, they like to do everything through Rancher. So we're actually starting to do full lifecycle management of Kubernetes clusters that are not our own distros. So the first one we're supporting in 2.5 is actually the most popular distro. It's Amazon's EKS, and
fits right into a GitOps strategy, right?
Yeah, so you can, with 2.5, you can create a EKS cluster and have that completely managed through Rancher. I mean, you don't even need to you can use the native Amazon tools, but you don't really even need to use that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. If you can, I'd love to turn the conversation to the current business climate and the initiatives that are really being brought to IT and product development teams that are responding to pressures in the market, financial pressures, both competitive and changing customer expectations too. So a lot of people have accelerated their digital strategies, and that's more work, not less, which is a great thing for software teams. Are you seeing the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible that just the amount of acceleration we've been seeing as our business, even though the economy as a whole is going through some challenges. And I think we feel very lucky to be at this critical juncture of really infrastructure build out and application development. Just it's amazing. Just a couple of days ago, I saw, because we're near the end of our, we go by calendar quarters, so we're at the end. We saw like just this quarter. I've been seeing the kind of deals that's coming through. They're really these companies. Some of them are heavily impacted by the current crisis. Companies like, for example, cruise ship companies. I mean, you would think, but these companies are actually taking this opportunity to retool their internal IT operations and application stack, right? And then and they're basically going to emerge from this current pandemic much stronger in the future.
It's interesting that is a pattern over different economic downturns. Like Apple almost doubled their investment after 2001, and sort of that's what helped emerge the iPod and iPad, and Cisco kind of famously rebuilt their supply chain to be much more flexible during the 2008 downturn. So if you're on shaky financial ground going into a downturn, it's tough road. But if you're in that place where you can reinvest, you can really accelerate your place in market and actually kind of propel yourself out of the downturn, not just be trying to stay with it and ride the wave, however slow it might be.
Because most companies, when they're going through years and after years of fast growth, it's very difficult to actually take a break and retool and re-architect and get rid of, pay back some technical debt or your business processes debt. It's just hard, right? And this is a great opportunity, and you're absolutely right. That's, I believe, one of the reasons that's driving the continuing growth of our business.
Interesting. What do you kind of foresee in the next 3 to 6 months happening? What's on your horizon that your customers are saying, hey, we're making some shifts or changes, or being asked for what kind of demands are you seeing happening?
We're seeing tremendous demand, out of the couple of specific areas. I would say I initially didn't quite anticipate. One is what would be traditionally more of a laggard segment, the high security, high certification required kind of government and the security hardened kind of segment. So with 2.5, we're shipping a government edition, special government edition of really driven by the U.S. government, but other governments, many of them follow the same rules as well. We need to be FIPS enabled. We need to pass all kinds of other certifications. So Kubernetes is going everywhere, all the way to highly sensitive and classified workloads. That's really exciting. And another area is as we all know, Kubernetes started in the data center and in the cloud, and Rancher kind of pioneered the notion of with K3s running Kubernetes in Raspberry Pis and surveillance cameras, and we shipped that technology over a year ago. It's been tremendously popular, but in the early days, it was more like a novelty. We had folks like Chick-fil-A obviously making that famous blog article with running Kubernetes in their stores, and that was actually, they were using an early version of RKE to do that initially, and that was what motivated a lot of our investment into edge computing. That's like more than 2 years ago by now, but there weren't a lot of real movement. But just in the last 6 to 9 months, I think Kubernetes on the edge is real. Later this month, we're actually organizing a edge computing powered by Kubernetes conference. So a Kubernetes on the edge conference, and a lot of our customers just looking at who's going to present there. I mean, there are a lot of them are who's of enterprise, and especially in areas like manufacturing, retail, government. Just a lot of not just you could imagine when you talk about edge computing, we're not just talking about online businesses who are largely cloud-based. We're talking a lot more about brick and mortar businesses, which still powers majority of the economy. So I'm really excited about it, and we are with 2.5, we're introducing this thing called scalable GitOps. GitOps has been quite popular as a way to continuously deploy applications onto Kubernetes clusters. But with edge computing, there are so many points of presence. An organization have to deploy applications out to thousands of retail locations or tens of thousands of cell towers, hundreds of thousands of points of presence, IoT gateways. So we earlier this year, we created a project called Fleet that aimed at making GitOps scalable. And 2.5 we just shipped. It makes we productize that feature. So GitOps at scale for edge clusters. I'm really excited about it. It's a brand. I
think we're going to see tremendous growth there, and
yeah,
a little bit of it too is kind of prompted out of the realization with the rise of IoT devices of
exactly
the way software has been created in those environments. And I don't mean just low-end devices, but software has not been built the same way we build like cloud software today. And if you can push it the other direction, so you have that same architecture with K3s, so you've got a lighter weight Kubernetes, you're still running a very flexible clustered environment with containers. Sorry, it's late in the day for me here. It's natural I think it's very natural to push that architecture out to the edge.
Yeah, so those are the things, like Kubernetes in these high trust, high security environments. Like you wouldn't expect, cutting edge technologies to penetrate so quickly, and also Kubernetes as a platform powering IoT, edge computing, right? And not just online businesses, but a lot of brick and mortar businesses, lots of factory floors, lots of ships and flights and vehicles. It just oil platforms, just tremendously exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, fantastic! It's been a joy talking with you. Congratulations on the 2.5 release and the acquisition. It happened a little while back here. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Mitch. It's great talking to you as well.
Great. Thanks for joining me, Sheng Liang, CEO and co-founder of Rancher Labs.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Good stuff, Mitchell, and very great. Best of luck, Shang. Great news. We'll be keeping our eye open on this and watching what's happening there. Well, folks, that's going to do it for today, Tuesday, October 6th. We will be back with episode 100 of TechStrong TV on Thursday, October 8th. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel, hoping you stay well, stay safe, stay strong, TechStrong. We'll be in touch. Thanks. Bye-bye.